Right, you ready, David?
I'm ready. Let's go ahead and do it.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of Paleo Talks. And this week, we have Dr. Dana Ehret. Who's going to be talking with us about sharks, white sharks in particular. And we have been very mammal-centric, I think. We've been Ice Age focused almost. And so this is something quite different. And from my perspective, something that I can't even pretend to know that much about. So really excited today to learn more about some of these fascinating shark tales that we're going to look into here. We're coming to you from East Tennessee State University, Johnson City, Tennessee, Center of Excellence in Paleontology, which oversees the Gray Fossil Site and Museum. And I'm Blaine Schubert, the director of the Center of Excellence. Again, we're on episode 9. And my co-host is David Moscato, and we're going to do things a little bit differently today than what we've done in the past. And David always sort of tells everybody how this works. So David, if you could chime in and tell everybody how this is going to work and a little bit differently today.
Sure thing. Yes, so we are live streaming to YouTube, which means our normal Q&A setup is not active in the Zoom chat. So instead, if you're watching this on YouTube and you have a question, we'll start out with Blaine leading Dana through some of his work, telling us about these sharks. And then about halfway through, so in about 20 minutes or so, we will open it up to questions from the audience. So you can go ahead and put those in the chat, the live chat, beside our YouTube video. You may be prompted to log into a Google account before you can chat. And if you have any issues with that for some reason, go to our Facebook, go to our Twitter, send us a message. I'll be keeping an eye on there as well. So if you have a question, hopefully we'll be able to get to it. And we'll be monitoring the chat, keeping track of questions, moderating comments that show up in the chat throughout the event.
All right. Thank you, David. All right, let's get on to talking with Dana. Again, he works on all sorts of things. Herpetofauna, sharks. He'll tell you about some of his various works and introduce himself a little bit more, but he's actually coming to us today from New Jersey, where he is assistant curator of natural history at the New Jersey State Museum. Is that right, Dana?
Yep, that's correct.
All right. And so I guess, David, if you'll go ahead and switch us over to being able to see Dana, he can tell us a little bit more about himself. Maybe just start with where you got your PhD, what your background is. You're from New Jersey, aren't you?
Yeah, yep, that's right. I'm a New Jersey native, and I grew up down the shore, as we say up here, near Asbury Park, and I went to Stockton University. Now it was a college back then, back in the old days, and then I went to the University of Florida for my master's and my PhD, where I worked on both fossil turtles and then sharks for my PhD.
That's a good combination.
I always joke I went from working on a group of animals with no teeth to a group of animals that you only find their teeth in the fossil.
Yeah, people when I sometimes tell people I work on snakes and bears, they really wonder how in the world you could get to that point. And so you're sort of in the same boat.
Yes, very much so.
Well, if you could go ahead and show us your first slide and share.
Great. Yep.
I think that one of the things that we all sort of think about that know a little bit about sharks is that there's shark teeth on the beaches and you know, there's shark teeth here, there's shark teeth there, but we don't really hear a lot about fossil sharks and the natural history of sharks. And so, you know, why is that? Maybe as you get into this, start right off telling us why the record is so biased.
Right. Yeah, that's a great place to start. Well, sharks are cartilaginous fishes, which means that their skeletons are primarily composed of cartilage, the same type of material that your nose and ears are made of. And that doesn't fossilize very often. And only occasionally, or certain parts of a shark's body, especially their vertebrae, they will calcify later in their lives, so they do get preserved. But the fossil record of sharks is almost exclusively teeth. And sharks have what we call constant tooth replacement. So they constantly grow new teeth. They constantly shed old teeth from the front of their jaw. And so they kind of move into place like a conveyor belt. And some studies on modern sharks have showed that some species might grow and shed upwards of 30,000 teeth in their lifetime. And sharks have been around we know on Earth for over 400 million years. So if you think of every shark that's ever lived for over 400 million years, there's a lot of shark teeth out there that have gotten preserved. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of effort to make so many teeth. How long do they keep a tooth in their mouth?
Well, it probably depends on the species. Some species probably only a couple weeks. Some probably more on the order of months.
Okay.
It depends, on what the diet is. Something like a great white, like we see on my slide here, that's actively taking prey like marine mammals, they're probably going to break and have teeth pulled out much more readily than something like, say, a whale shark that's filter feeding and only has tiny little pegs for teeth at this point. Yeah, so it really does depend.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So what I've shown here is just a quick intro to the modern white shark, Carcharodon, carcharias. It's one of the largest living predatory sharks. The largest recorded one in recent times is about 21 feet, or is about 6.5 meters. They belong to the family Lamnidae, which also includes Mako sharks and porbeagle sharks and salmon sharks. Which most people don't hear that much about. We find the first true great white shark teeth in the fossil record about 4.5 million years ago. And you can find them up and down both the east and west coasts of the United States pretty regularly. There's a lot of discussion, there has been in the past, about where the white shark came from. What are its ancestors? And another topic that I done a lot of research and talked about is megalodon, which is a species name. The genus seems to bounce around a little bit, but we use Otodus or Carcharodon megalodon. And that was really the focus of some of my research on fossil great whites. So here we have a picture of me with about a 9-foot-long female. I was down doing some field work in South Africa a number of years ago, just for scale. And then this tooth on the bottom is a very, very large fossil great white from Gordon Hubbell's private collection. And as I mentioned, today great whites get to be about 21 feet long. This tooth, if you measure it and compare it to what we know about growth of modern great whites, this tooth would have been from a shark about 27 to almost 30 feet long. So it appears that they got larger in the past than they do today. I'm going to jump right in. This specimen here is what I worked on for my PhD. This is the holotype of a species called Carcharodon hubbelli. And it was collected back in the 1980s. By some local collectors in Peru, along with Dr. Gordon Hubbell, who lives in Gainesville, Florida. And it was part of his collection, but he has since donated it to the Florida Museum. This specimen, you can see, it's very unusual. We talked about the fact that usually you only find isolated shark teeth. These are actual fossilized shark jaws with the teeth in place. There are over 220 teeth. There are a total of about 45 vertebrae. And a lot of these platy, flaky pieces around the edges, these are actually parts of the jaws and the skull. And if we kind of move along here, I kind of drawn out a diagram of all the different tooth positions that are represented in this specimen. And this is how it was found in the ground. It was collected in southern Peru. And we'll talk a little bit about that, and then a region called Moscato in the Pisco Formation. So this specimen is really important because it's not just an isolated teeth or a pile of teeth that just kind of were left behind after a shark died and rotted away. This is an articulated set of shark jaws and vertebrae. Very, very rare in the shark, the fossil record for sharks. And because it's articulated and it has all these teeth in position, it can tell us more about the morphological characters and the relationships of this species of fossil white shark with other groups of sharks, including Makos and things like the megatooth sharks as well. So it was a real honor to work on this specimen.
Yeah, so what are the special circumstances that would allow it to be preserved that well?
Right, so the Pisco Formation in Peru makes news all the time. I've kind of highlighted it here on the map. It's in southern Peru, and this region is right along the Pacific coast. And what you actually have here is a series of marine regressions and transgressions. The ocean has quickly inundated with sea level rise the region, then it has retreated and inundated and retreated multiple times. It's been thought of kind of like a lagoonal area, so there might have been some barrier islands with a back bay or lagoon area, very low energy environment. We also know that being on the Ring of Fire, there was a lot of volcanism in the material. So we find multiple volcanic ash layers. So that helps us date the area, but it also helps preserve these specimens. And this, besides sharks, this region is known for marine mammals. Nick Pyenson has worked down farther in Chile on these whale falls. You actually get preserved baleen in the whales. I mentioned under marine mammals, sloths. There were seagrass eating sloths that were swimming along the coast of Peru about 8 to about 1.5 to 2 million years ago. You get penguins with skin and feather impressions, sea turtles, the walrus tusked dolphin that's been mentioned. And I just took a picture here. This is an actual endocast of the brain of probably a small whale that we just found laying out in the deserts down there. The fossils are all over the ground, and the preservation is wonderful. It's very remote. So you might say, well, where did you do with that specimen? Well, there's only one highway that travels down this entire coast from Lima, and we had a car. And so there's really no infrastructure there to be able to pull these kind of specimens out. So back in 2007, when Dr. Hubble donated this shark specimen, we weren't sure exactly what geologic layer he collected it from. He was just more interested in getting the specimen out of the ground. And so we didn't really even know what the actual age of the specimen was. As I showed on a previous slide, the Pisco Formation ranges from about 9 million years ago to about 1.5 million years ago. And we know that modern great whites show up in the fossil record about 4 million years ago. And this species seems to show some characters of modern great whites, but it had some characters that more aligned it with Mako sharks. And knowing how old it was is really important. So all we had to go off of was a picture or a series of pictures that Dr. Hubble had taken back in 1988. And this is what you see here. This gentleman is holding his hands open where the jaws were. This gentleman is pointing where the tail was. And that's what we had to go off of. This man down here that I'm highlighting, that's Dr. Tom DeVries. He's an invertebrate paleontologist based in Seattle, Washington today. And he's been working down in Peru since the 1970s. We invited Tom to come with us, and Tom knows this region so well that he was able to use the mountains in the background. And in particular, this little mesa here is the same as this little mesa back here. It took us about a day, day and a half, but not only were we able to locate the region, we literally found the hole where the specimen came from. There's a lot of salt in this loose sand due to these marine regressions and transgressions, and it really holds like a crust on the top. So it's not a lot of erosion. We actually found 2 teeth that fit the specimen still in the hole. So we recreated this photo. This is my PhD advisor, Dr. Bruce McFadden, and Tom DeVries recreating this picture over 20 years later, almost 20 years later. So I just want to jump in to talk about white shark evolution. And historically, there have been two kind of competing hypotheses. Where did the modern great white shark come from? Meaning, what were its ancestors? One of the prevailing, probably the prevailing hypothesis for over 100 years is that the great white shark was very closely related to megalodon, the largest shark that ever lived. And it was even put in the same genus for probably over 100 years. That was kind of the common nomenclature. And that the great white was really just a smaller version of megalodon. Back in the 1940s and then especially in the 1960s, researchers noticed or compared great white shark teeth with an extinct species of shark was called Isurus hastilis. The name's been changed again a couple times, but it's commonly called a broadtooth mako. And this hypothesis really holds that the great white shark is just a really highly modified mako shark that probably evolved to eat marine mammals, and that the megatooth sharks are different altogether.
So since this is mostly based on teeth, though, is that problematic?
Yes. So these drawings I'm showing here are not real cladograms. You can't really do phylogenetic analyses just using shark teeth. And part of that is because the shark teeth themselves, their morphology is really dependent on their diet. And you see that characters are highly homoplasic, which means that you have the evolution of very similar tooth shapes and morphologies, in some cases, multiple to dozens of times to feed on a specific thing. So for instance, we know that serrations have evolved in white sharks. They've separately evolved in megalodon, and its ancestors. It's separately evolved in tiger sharks. It's separately evolved. So yes, it's very difficult, and really no phylogenetic analyses are done on fossil teeth, just because there's just not enough concrete characters there. And so here I just have a picture of a megalodon tooth. Obviously, you can see the scales are different in the great white. And the reason that these two species were closely linked together is really because they just look similar. They're big triangular teeth with serrations and probably used for eating marine mammals, biting into and cutting marine mammal flesh. Some of the reasons that were given to support this hypothesis were that, both have serrations. Well, megalodon has very fine, small serrations. Modern white sharks have big, coarse, steak-knife serrations. So, as I like to say, a serration isn't a serration isn't a serration. There's different morphologies even to the serrations themselves. We don't find any early true white shark forms back in the fossil record alongside megalodon's ancestors going back 40 or 50 million years. The fossils just aren't there. And another reason that was given for their close relationship is that artificial tooth sets have been put together for megalodon and its ancestors over the past 100 years. And the argument is, well, the tooth sets for megalodon look exactly like modern great white shark tooth sets. Well, they look like modern great white tooth sets because scientists used great white sharks as a model to reconstruct what the dentitions look like for megalodon. So, of course, they're going to look very similar to one another. Looking at these fossil makos, this is now called Carcharodon hastilis. I changed the genus name. And this species lived from about 15 million years ago up until about 7 or 8 million years ago. Again, very commonly found down the eastern and western coasts of the United States. These teeth are triangular. They're roughly the same size, but they lack any serrations on them. So there are some similarities again, but there are some differences. And so the missing link, and I know there are no real missing links, everything is a missing link from one species to another, is that you would need to find these morphologies where you have serrations forming or being formed. And lo and behold, this fossil white shark from Peru, Carcharodon hubbleii, fits that model. So here's what the teeth look like for Carcharodon hubbleii. This is a zoom in on one of the teeth from that tooth set. And what you'll see is that there are very large coarse serrations at the base of the tooth, and they actually get finer and finer, and they actually kind of trail off towards the tip. So we know that based on going back to Peru and aging of the site where that shark came from, this specimen is about 6.5 million years old. So we know that this shark predated modern great whites or modern white sharks, and that it comes a little bit after, but does overlap somewhat with Carcharodon hastellus. These teeth are found primarily in the Pacific. They're found in Peru, Chile, Japan, Australia, and California. So it appears that this shark evolved in the Pacific Basin and was widespread during the Miocene time period, about 9 to about 6 million years ago. And so we find a shark that has some serrations. They're not fully formed like we see in modern great whites, but it has more serrations than what we see in hastellus. The tooth shape is very similar. We have a large triangular tooth, a flat root. The tooth is very thin and very flat. Megalodon teeth and other megatooth shark teeth are actually very thick in comparison to these teeth. And because we had an articulated dentition, we actually could compare the different tooth positions of Carcharodon hubbleii with modern white sharks and then other modern Mako sharks as well. And so we see a mosaic of characteristics between the two. And I won't get into all the nuances, but the way that the third anterior tooth slants in a modern great white is different than that in a modern Mako. And it gets very, very complicated. But having this articulated dentition really helped us show that these characters were real. You know, we know that in Carcharodon hubbleii, it has a third anterior tooth that slants away from the midline of the jaw like a Mako shark. However, it has serrations like a modern great white. So we find characteristics of both Mako sharks and modern great whites in this species from the Miocene of Peru. So again, this is not a true cladogram. This is more of a mock-up. But what do we actually see here? We probably see that great whites peel away from the Mako lineage back in the early middle Miocene, and they become more specialized for probably eating marine mammals. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Whereas we have our modern short fin and long fin Makos here with a long fossil record and multiple different fossil species along the way.
Dana, we should start opening it up for some questions, and then what you can do is you can incorporate some of your slides and keep talking about it as you address some of those questions. So
Sure.
Yeah. Do you have one ready?
Yeah, so as a reminder for everybody watching, we've got a good audience built up on our YouTube video right now. So for everybody who's watching us, we are going to start taking questions from the audience. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in the live chat beside the video. As I said before, if you're having any sort of issues getting into the live chat, head over to the Gray Fossil site, Twitter or Facebook, and send us your question and a message, and we'll try to get through as many of these as we can. So to start, we have a question from Chris in our live chat for you, Dana, who asks, do you have any insight into which Cretaceous species is responsible for the white shark lineage?
Ooh, yeah, that That's a great question. The answer is not really. Today, we believe that the Cretaceous species, or genus, I should say, Cretalamna, is probably a precursor to the megatooth sharks that we see today. But where some of the modern lamniform sharks come from, not really sure on that one at this point. Yeah, we're going back to the Cretaceous pre 65 million years. So that's much farther back than some of the modern groups that we're even talking about here at 6 to 8 million years ago. The Cretaceous genus Cretalamna has undergone a lot of serious revisions even in the past couple years. And there's still some interesting specimens out there that still need to be described. So I'm going to say that there still needs to be more work done on some of these sharks to figure that out.
Dana, I remember, going to the Florida Museum and seeing the big jaws,
Yeah.
and growing up and looking in the Guinness Book of World Records and that sort of thing, and seeing these massive jaws depicting the past. Are those accurate?
Yeah, so I'll jump ahead real quick. Yeah, you're talking about these are the megalodon jaws. Yeah, so these jaws here, the jaws are not real; they're fiberglass, but the teeth in these jaws are real. And these were done by a man named Dr. Cliff Jeremiah, who lives up in Jacksonville, Florida. And these jaws are based on real teeth, like I said. And you ask, are they accurate? I also threw in the new Meg that's hanging in the Smithsonian. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to see it yet because of everything being closed. But again, that's probably a very good interpretation as well. And kudos to the folks at the Smithsonian. Well, how do we know that they're accurate? Well, we don't have, I'll preface it by saying that megalodon is extinct. And I know hopefully some of the other listeners will share my sentiments that we still have to remind people this almost on a daily basis. So there are no modern members of the megalodon lineage alive today, but the modern correlate really is a great white shark. It's a mega predator that feeds on marine mammals. And so what we do is we look at things like the size of the teeth versus the total body length to come up with estimates. So I have a slide up here, and I was able to estimate the body length of this extinct great white shark by measuring the tooth crown height and then comparing them to growth regressions, of modern great whites. And you can do that with teeth. You can also do that with vertebrae. So this is a vertebra. And I'm showing here, this is the centrum diameter from the vertebra versus total body length. And this work is done by modern shark biologists. And we're very thankful that they're out there doing this kind of work. And so we can measure these fossil teeth to come up with at least reasonable estimates for body size. And so, yeah, there is a wide range for total body lengths for megalodon, but it is based and rooted in science. And I think the jaws that you see in places like the Florida Museum are accurate. And certainly, again, the model in the Smithsonian.
Okay.
So speaking of megalodon and how we understand megalodon, we have a question in the chat from Grant, one of the graduates of our paleo program here at ETSU, who asks, how would you depict megalodon if you were pressed to do so right now?
How would I depict? Meaning, I'm not quite sure how, meaning how would they look or how would they act? Yeah, I mean, a lot folks have kind of scaled up a great white sharks to be a megalodon. I've seen some more recent reinterpretations. Megalodon probably was a pretty robust shark. I've heard, I think it's more jokingly that, oh, maybe it just had a really big mouth and it wasn't as big as it was. But obviously, to be able to have a mouth with over 200 teeth, and some of these teeth, including the root measurements, reach lengths upwards of 7 inches long. This is a very large shark. Probably not exactly the same body form as megalodon. Probably not. I'm sorry, as a great white. Probably not quite as streamlined. I doubt that a megalodon could swim at speeds like a modern great white, or certainly not a modern Mako. When people say, well, what did megalodon eat? The answer is, well, whatever it wanted to.
Yeah.
We're talking probably about a 50-foot long shark that was living in nearshore coastal environments up until about 3.5 to 4 million years ago.
So Dana, what about this picture here of yourself with shark teeth? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this picture I'm showing here, this is from a study that I did with some other members of my lab, where we actually investigated the potential of a megalodon nursery area down in Panama. And so when the widening of the Panama Canal was going on about 10 or 15 years ago, there was a lot of fossils that were being uncovered at that time. And the Florida Museum was working on a lot of those specimens, and a lot of shark teeth were being recovered. And a majority of the megalodon teeth that were recovered, we found were very small. So this picture depicts me holding a very large, repaired great megalodon tooth. And next to it is what has been called a Hubble tooth. And that's because Dr. Gordon Hubble is one of the first people to recognize that this is actually a juvenile megalodon tooth. And the teeth in many species of sharks will actually change as the shark gets older. So we call that ontogenetic change. And juvenile or small megalodon teeth almost have a more heart-like appearance, or a heart shape to them, and can kind of change their morphology. And so this is a picture that was taken while I was at the Florida Museum to go along with the paper that we had out in PLOS One on a potential megalodon nursery area. Yeah.
So we have another megalodon question. This one came from on our Facebook. This is from Jack, who is 9 years old. What oceans did megalodon inhabit?
Well, megalodon was what we call a cosmopolitan species, which means that we find their teeth all over the world. Either megalodon or its ancestors, the other megatooth sharks, have been found on all 7 continents. And we find them in the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean. Like I said, I don't think megalodon teeth, but I believe auriculatus, Otodus auriculatus, an ancestral species, has been reported from Seymour Island in the Antarctic. So megalodon was found worldwide, and it was, as I mentioned previously, it really was a coastal species. These sharks were swimming along the continental shelves and feeding primarily on probably marine mammals. And there are numerous reports of whale bones with bite marks, and I believe it's I think the Carmel Church site in Virginia, there's actually a whale skull with megalodon teeth associated with it. So we know that they were living near shore and eating large mammals.
All right. Blaine, you want to try to get through a couple more of these questions?
Yeah, let's do this one from Nathan at the Peru site. Do you think there was an anoxic region in the water to preserve the fossils so well?
Well, what we have occurring down in Peru is during this time period, it's still much warmer than it is today during the Miocene. And really, there's been a lot of research and a lot of work done down there. We have very high sedimentation rates. And it's a very productive environment. A lot of single-celled organisms that are living in the ocean, a lot of zooplankton that were raining down on the seafloor and preserving specimens very quickly. So this is not a case of ice preserving or cold preserving these specimens. This is really a region where you have very rapid depositional environments that are burying these specimens very quickly. And like I mentioned earlier, it was probably a fairly low energy environment. So it was allowing these organisms to die and fall to the bottom and then get buried very, very quickly.
Yeah, you may have misheard. It was whether or not it was anoxic.
Anoxic. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I did mishear that. Yeah. There probably was again some level to that. It's pretty shallow. So again, like I said, there's been a lot of research being done, or there has been a lot of work done, and really, I think the sedimentation rates were just very high and allowed for these organisms to very quickly. And obviously, it was a very high area of productivity, so there's probably just a lot of organisms there in the first place, very species rich and biomass rich. So, not everything is getting preserved, but there's a pretty good sample of what's out there.
Let's do one more, David.
All right, let's go with this one from Raphael. Are there any Paleozoic sharks thought to be ancestral to the modern day shark lineages?
Well, we know that most of the modern sharks, which are called neoselacians, or the new sharks, they show up in the fossil record really during the Jurassic, probably maybe late Triassic, about 200 million years ago. So most of the Paleozoic shark forms that existed out there, they are really an early lineage that goes extinct. Really, one of the few last holdouts were the hybodont sharks, which made it to the end of the Cretaceous. Things like Otodus and a genus called Meristitinoides, which is a mouthful that I like to say. But the neoselacians that include all of the living species originated in the early Jurassic period. Yeah.
Great. Dana, is there anything else you wanted to mention about the white sharks before we end the recording part of this?
So as a reminder, while you pull that up for everybody who's watching, what I think we'll probably do is end the recording like usual. And then we have at least one more question. So we'll continue to take questions even after the official presentation time is ended. So everyone stick around.
Yeah, I have more questions too.
Yeah,
so do I.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm a shark paleontologist, but I always try to end with, well, why does this matter? And so my take home why does this matter message is that by studying these sharks in the past, by studying where and what groups in particular they evolved from, it can really help us learn more about the sharks that are out there today. How did these sharks deal with climate change in the past? How did they deal with changing food resources? That can really better inform us about the species that we have today. And a lot of shark species today are in decline, are threatened or endangered. And so I hope that paleontologists can help the modern biologists and the modern conservationists protect the species that are out there today. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. That was really enlightening. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem.
All right.